Here we are again, College Hoops Coast to Coast. We got Sweeney back 2 weeks ago. He was here, Wyoming and Colorado State. Colorado State is still on fire, as is Wyoming, now in the top 25. We're back at it again. He did a phenomenal piece on David Roddy. If you haven't seen it, check that out. And then he got to see Wyoming play in person, who he didn't think was going to be as good as they are, but they are proving the expert wrong. So
I don't think anyone thought they were going to be as good as they are. Just
no, this is very true. But you did see him in person, and you weren't really all the way sure that they were going to be that good still.
That's true.
That's true. Fair. That's fair. All right, well, let's dive in to the show. Anything that you'd like to open with other than Sweeney 7? Any overall thoughts about just like life and how it's going?
We're less than a month away from Selection Sunday, which I realized this morning and kind of had like an existential crisis about it because I was like, wow, I'm excited. I have a ridiculous amount to do before then. And also,
I think it's 26 days.
Yeah. And also, what happens when the season ends in 2 months? What am I going to do? I'm
going to do?
I'm about to get some hobbies. This is no good. No, excited about it. Should be a good ride. You know, we've had a great season so far and certainly a great tournament ahead. So let's dive in, my friend.
Yeah, it's about as wide open with no clear-cut favorite as it's been, right?
Yeah.
A lot of number one games this season. All right, let's dive in. Sweeney 7, the top 6 of the top 10 teams lose college basketball at its finest. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I mean, look, in 4 days too. I mean, that doesn't even include the weekend when there were more losses. You know, it was pretty impressive. Just, you know, it didn't feel, none of them felt like crazy upsets. I mean, maybe SMU over Houston you'd have been surprised by. Maybe you would have been surprised by Texas Tech losing to Oklahoma. But, you know, really for the most part, like, it was just teams balling out, right? Like, it was a lot of fun to watch. And a good reminder, again, that there is no truly a team, right? I mean, look back to the job that Arkansas did on their home court to upset Auburn and execute a really good game plan to try to take Jabari Smith out of the game, and did that really well until overtime when Smith hit a couple of threes late. But, you know, you kind of just go through. It's like, it's a great reminder of why this thing is wide open because, you know, even, you know, other than Gonzaga, and even Gonzaga was within 8 at the U4 the second half, right? I mean, that was a final score of a 16-point game for Gonzaga, but it was an 8-point game with 3:40 to go between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. So, you know, everyone's beatable. This was a great reminder of it. It also made it very hard for me to put together my weekly top 25 because I was like, well, everybody lost. So where does everyone move? As a bracketologist, I love it because everyone loses. I don't have to move anyone. As a person trying to rank teams, I kind of hate it because I have to figure out what it means. So it's been certainly an up and down week. Certainly expect similar things this week and beyond, as you know, there's some big matchups ahead. I know Kentucky, Tennessee on Tuesday is one of the bigger games of the week, really important for both teams as they try to, make their cases. Certainly Kentucky trying to make a case for a 1 seed. That would be a huge win if they can go into Towson Bowling Arena and win it. So, man, it was just one of those whirlwind weeks that happens every so often, and you got to appreciate them when you have them.
Which one stood out the most, if there was one? Kind of all similar, but
I think SMU over Houston, and maybe that gets watered down a little bit because of Houston losing to Memphis over the weekend. But in terms of the desperation factor, right? I mean, look, Arkansas was going to be fine whether or not they beat Auburn, right? You know, maybe Michigan could have used that Purdue loss, but Purdue win, excuse me. But they have so many opportunities. But Michigan still has 6 more Quadrant 1 games on its schedule. You know, this was the opportunity for SMU. They don't get Q1 games all the time. They don't get these opportunities to make a statement. So to get a top 10 team in your building, a top 5 team, and to knock them off after trailing by double digits in the second half and give your bubble hope some life, I mean, season changing without a doubt for SMU. So that really stood out to me.
We'll go straight to, even though we're going a little out of order, we'll go straight to SMU.
Yeah.
Talk about this statement.
It was a huge, I mean, again, I think this is a team that for most of the year, you would watch them and say, yeah, it's probably tournament caliber club. Really talented offensively, have tons of shooting, have a great point guard, a senior in Kendrick Davis who can really make plays in ball screens. The Weathers brothers have both knocked down shots at a high rate. You know, they're athletic and maybe not great up front. That's probably the one thing that you look at and say maybe that's their flaw, their weakness is they're just not very good, physically up there, and at times they're playing with 5 guards on the floor with Marcus Weathers as your 5-man. He's 6'5", 220. But that also makes him really hard to guard. And I thought you saw, in the second half that they could score against this Houston team in a way that very few teams really have. And obviously a lot of that's Davis, who had 22, 7, and 7. But, Weathers, the Weathers brothers come out for 37 points. Zach Nuttall from Sam Houston had, a big 11 points they needed in only 14 minutes of game action. So, they had to keep their rotations tight and just found a way. So now the door's wide open. Obviously, they have, a relatively thin margin for error in this conference because there just aren't that many, good wins out there and a lot of potential minefields. But if they can close this thing here and win at Temple, home Memphis, home Tulsa, and then home Cincinnati, home Tulane, even if they lose at Houston, I think they're probably going to be in the field, right? If they're 23-6 going into conference tournament week, it's going to be tough to keep them out.
Yeah, I don't think people expected 2 bids to be possible in this league, and people haven't talked about this league being a 2-bid or multiple bid league in a long time. I want to take a quick second to just shout out Kendrick Davis. I don't think he gets the love that he probably deserves as one of the elite point guards in the country, and not a guy who's very big in stature or doesn't play above the rim. But man, he had a phenomenal season last season. And he's upped it even more this season. Houston product, started his career at TCU, but does it, like you said, almost close to triple-double-its numbers for someone who's maybe listed at 5-6 foot, but he's sub 6 foot for sure.
Yeah, and there was so much conversation, and still is, about the fact that there aren't elite point guards in college basketball.
He's elite.
Yeah, that's not true, right? It's just that he doesn't play on ESPN every night, right? He's really good and deserves all the love he's gotten in the last week, and deserves all the love he will continue to get into March.
Yep. Yeah, I would love to see him playing in March. Obviously biased being from Texas and from Dallas, but would love to see him playing in March. All right, let's go to Mark Bray and the impressive season Notre Dame is having.
I mean, I just think Mike Bray has done a really, really good job with this group. And I think, his seat was warm entering this year. And were they ever going to call it a firing? Probably not. But it was starting to feel like, it's time to move on. And maybe it still is for Mike Bray. Like, I don't view him as a guy who's going to coach until he's 70. I think it's very possible he says this is it. But the fact that they are tied atop the ACC at this point in the season, considering where they've been the last couple seasons, says a lot about the job that Mike Bray has done. And again, part of it is that they convinced Blake Wesley to stay home. He's a South Bend kid, freshman. He's going to be a first-round pick if he comes out this year. Really kind of explosive playmaker who's given them a different look in the backcourt. But guys have gotten better. Guys have bought in. Guys have defended at a higher level than they have the last couple seasons. They've improved on the glass. They've improved defensive. Not letting teams live at the free throw line. They take care of the basketball, and they've generally done an awesome job in ACC play since losing their opener at BC of taking care of business in the games you have to take care of business in. Right? I mean, this league is not great this year. There's a lot of NIT level teams that you really have to beat if you want to be in the NCAA tournament, but they're capable of beating you any night. And I just think Notre Dame has done a great job ever since. Again, they got blown out at BC on December 3rd. And that game has really been a turning point for them. Since then, they beat Kentucky. They've gotten some huge road wins. They have 3 of their last 4 wins have been on the road. One at Miami 2 weeks ago. That's a huge win. They've just done a great job. And I think when you're talking about National Coach of the Year conversations, I don't think Bray should win it, but he should certainly be on your ballot.
Well said. Well said. The hometown kid from Albany, we're going to talk about the hometown team. Let's go Sienna's big week.
Huge week. Look, Sienna started 0-4. Not only did they start 0-4, they started 0-4 with 4 blowout losses. And, again, they were playing good teams, teams that had won their league the previous year, but that's not the standard at that place. And, people heard about it, right? And it was, after they'd won 2 straight league titles and they had lost really everyone from that team last year. You're sitting like, all right, is this it, right? Like, are they in trouble? Where does it stand? And they have just turned it around in a major way. And this week was the kind of final encapsulation of it. They go beat Iona on their home court. They bring out students in a way that I haven't seen in a long time, right? Siena plays downtown away from campus. So, it's harder to get students to games. And they brought a huge student turnout, beat Iona, the number one team in the league, and then won in overtime yesterday against Ryder in a really big win for them that they really needed if they want to solidify a top 3 spot in the league. One in overtime needed, 2 free throws from Anthony Gaines, their senior, at the end of overtime to win it, but needed 2 free throws from Jared Billups, a freshman, at the end of regulation to tie it, and got those. So just a team that continues to battle and continues to grind, and Coach Carm and their whole staff has done a really good job after a tough start of righting the ship and getting guys buying in. And they've dealt with so many injuries and guys in and out of the lineup, but have just kept finding ways to win ball games. And now they're 9-4 in the league, 12-9 overall. They're tied for second place in the conference, have a really good chance to be the number 2 or the 3 seed in the MAC tournament. And again, I think that's a credit to the job that Coach Carm does, considering all that they lost. I mean, they lost the player of the year in the league to graduation. They lost Jalen Pickett, who transferred to Penn State and is one of the better point guards in the Big Ten. They lost another all-conference guy in Jordan King, who's at East Tennessee State now. They lost a couple other rotation players who just graduated, or a couple transferred as well, and really had to start from scratch. And they've just done a really good job of putting the pieces together and growing as the season goes on.
Yep, more great stuff. We'll keep it East Coast. We'll go to Hofstra, where Speedy Claxton and the boys are playing well, and they have a specific player that deserves a little more love.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Estrada is awesome. I think we talk about the portal so much in kind of, negative ways, or, this kid did this wrong or this right? Like, Aaron Estrada is a perfect example of a kid who's found his level. He went to St. Peter's. He was an awesome freshman. He looked really good. Was probably on track to be an all-conference guy as a sophomore. He goes in the portal. He goes to Oregon. He barely plays at Oregon. I mean, he was completely out of the rotation for big stretches of the year. During the COVID season, I think everyone who'd watched him said, you know what, he probably went too high. Comes back down to Hofstra, slightly higher level than the MAC, CAA level, and he has just been so dynamic. He's got 20 points or more in each of his last 5 games. He had a 35-point game 2 weeks ago, a 32-point game last week. He had 32, 6, and 6 in that game against Drexel. That was a huge win. He played all 40 minutes in it. 21, 7, and 4 against Delaware over the weekend. Delaware, another conference favorite, win that game on the road. He's just been awesome. He's been the building block to this Hofstra team for Speedy Claxton, another guy who had to kind of rebuild it through the portal and did a great job getting guys like Estrada, guys like Zach Cooks, guys like Darling Stone Dubar, Abiyomi Yola, who was really good for them in the game that they beat Arkansas earlier in the season. They've got a really competitive team, but it starts with Estrada at the point. And he is big, I think, really blossomed into one of the best mid-major point guards in the country.
Yeah, on top of that, he's the number 1 free throw percentage in the country. So not only is he getting to the line, but he's shooting 95% conference play from 3, shooting 41. He's definitely balling out, and a big reason why Hofstra is good. Speaking of balling out, we got the young man that you wrote an article on, David Roddy. We got to get the production team to get the Roddy up there. We'll get that on it. But let's talk about David Roddy. I got to see him play in person against Fresno State. A big matchup with really 2 Wooden finalists, with Orlando Robinson from Fresno State in that game as well. He played very well, especially in the first half. They both put on the show. But the second half, the Rams were too much. David Roddy, I think, is a really underrated passer, which you talked about in your article, body of a lineman, vision of a PG. I believe it was something along those lines, game of a PG. But yeah, he was special. He had 21, 8, and 7, and then he had a grittier performance in Boise. Wasn't as pretty or as fluid, but
everything you do against Boise is gritty.
I was say you have to do it rugged if you're gonna find a way to win. But he did. He even had some plays in that game that were plays he hadn't had to make in a while as far as the gritty part of his game. He's kind of shown more skill and more feel and more IQ, but he had to go back to the football version. So, yeah, let's talk about his next level.
Yeah, he's been awesome. This was, I think, a defining week plus for Colorado State. 5-game stretch where they played at Wyoming, home San Diego State, at Nevada, home Fresno, at Boise. And they've just responded to it in the best way. Opened it up with the Wyoming game that was a crushing loss. And Roddy, I think, felt like he was part of the reason they lost that game. He missed a free throw at the end of the game that would have won them the ball game. He then fouls out. They were winning when he fouled out. They lose by 6. So then turn around and be the best player on the floor against San Diego State and hit the game-winning shot to turn around and then go get 29 and shoot 4 of 5 from 3, 11 of 14 from the field overall against Nevada in a big road win. Then to go 21, 7, and 8 against Fresno in a big quadrant 2 win. And then, that gritty win, like you mentioned, against Boise State, where he goes for, 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 blocks against a really tough Boise team. Like, I just think it says it all about who he is as a kid and the battle that he has and the ability to impact the game in multiple ways, right? Like, there have been games in this stretch where he's done it with his 3-point shooting. There have been games in the stretch where he's done it with his playmaking. There have been games where he's done it by being tough and physical at the rim. There's been, games where he's done it with his defense. Like, he does every single thing you could possibly want from a basketball player. He just kind of plugs every hole for you. He's selfless, and he's a huge reason, obviously, that they're where they are, which is, approaching NCAA tournament lock status. They've got a little bit more work to do, but they have covered a lot of ground here in recent days. How about this? They're 7-0 in quadrant 2 games. They're 2-2 against quadrant 1, 7-0 against quadrant 2. So 9-2 overall against the top 2 quadrants, the teams that are the needle movers for the NCAA tournament. So give Nico a lot of credit, but obviously I think it's becoming more and more clear every time you watch them. But David Roddy is different, and he is special, and they wouldn't be where they are without him.
Yeah, they have obviously a good basketball team. You always do, but I think he's really stepped up in some ways that people hadn't seen from him prior. Obviously, you did a great job writing the in-depth article and got a chance to see it up close with you in the San Diego State game. And even in that game, that was a gritty win as well, a gritty game in the 50s, where he hits the game winner. And last night yesterday afternoon against Boise, he has a game-winning block, which is kind of an understated play because, you don't know if they make that shot or not, but he makes the block at half court on a 3. So just made big plays. And I think the part that even talking to their staff and talking to Ali and being able to go to shoot around, I think the part that they're been impressed with too is his maturity and his pace of the game and not being kind of this football player who's playing basketball. He's definitely a basketball player, and he's showing his IQ and his feel and his ability to pass and understand scouting report and guard different positions. And I think just being able to lead his team in different ways, because ultimately that's what it's about. And I think some people get caught up in this whole next level. Is he this? Is he that? What position is he? But ultimately, guys that can win, they can do it in a variety of ways like he can, I think have enormous value, and you figure out the rest later. It always is overhyped. That's part of the reason why he's at Colorado State, is because people with him and Isaiah Stevens are like, well, what about his size? Well, does he have this? Does he check this box? But when you have the kind of character and IQ and the kind of person that he is and that they are, great things happen. So job well done, David Roddy. And for the last one, making a little history out in Montana. You haven't gone that far west, but maybe next trip.
I've driven through Montana. Never.
Oh.
I stopped. I stopped at a Chipotle in Missoula. So that's that's the extent of my Montana experience. But give Danny Sprinkle a lot of credit. This is not necessarily an easy job, and he inherited it and went 10-10 in the league in year 1, 8-6 in year 2, and now in year 3. Just I think the real breakthrough has come. They're 20-5. It's their first 20-win season in 2 decades. And look, that's only with 2 non-Division I wins, right? I think it especially when you play in conference like that, you can inflate that number with 3-4 Division I non-Division ones. They played 2 of them, so they're 18 Division I wins. They're going to get to 20. It's a matter of time. They've done a great job of building up this program and developing players. The kid Bello up front has been tremendous. He draws fouls at about as high a rate as anyone not named Graham Ike. He's a monster. He blocks shots. He's great at the rim. He's a good rebounder. They have the little point guard, Xavier Bishop, who's very undersized, but a big time kind of shot maker and playmaker and gets downhill. And, they're big and physical on the wings. Did a good job in the portal to get Raekwon Battle from Washington, who's given them another lift. He's been a steady double-figure scorer for them lately. Was not necessarily making the early impact for them, but I believe now it's 8 straight games where he scored in double figures. Yeah, 8 in a row where he's been in double figures. So, with Battle, Adamu, Bishop, and then Bello in the middle, I mean, that's not an easy team to beat. So they deserve their spot at the top of the Big Sky right now. It's a wide open league, as I'm sure B can attest to.
Yep.
But it's certainly they deserve a lot of credit for the program that Danny Sprinkle has built there.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with the freshman Tyler Patterson as well. Wasn't expecting him to be kind of as good as he was as a freshman, but he's played a good role for them in his ability to stretch the floor. But, yeah, I actually saw them play in person, was able to broadcast that game against Northern Colorado, and believe it was an overtime game, if I'm not mistaken, and Northern Colorado was able to find a way to win. Close game. And then Northern Colorado plays Southern Utah today in about 3 hours. That'll be another good one. 2 teams in the top 4, and Montana State's won 11 in a row. They have a heck of a schedule left because they still have to play some of the top teams in the league, but they're rolling. They deserve all the credit. Not an easy job, as you said, and very cool for Danny Sprinkle to be able to take his team that he that he played at and led them to the tournament to just have that conversation. I mean, even talking to Steve Smiley from Northern Colorado today, just being able to play meaningful games in February, that's what you want to be able to do in leagues like this. So, much credit to him and his squad. And I think he led them to the conference championship game last year in the tournament. Just wasn't able to quite get over the hump. So that team has a lot of returners, has added some key pieces, like you said, and looking to make the next step. So congratulations on the start for them. Now we'll go to our awards real quick. We'll go backwards a little bit this time. We'll go HBCU first. HBCU Team of the Week. They've earned one once. They've won 6 in a row. Last time they earned it, they beat Florida. This time they're just getting it done in conference play, and that's Texas Southern. Yeah,
they've had a tremendous little run of late, particularly with the way that they guard. I think again, when we shouted them out, they had just gotten their first Division I win of the season, and that first D1 win came against Florida, which I think says a lot about the type of schedule and the type of gauntlet that they have to go through every week. But man, like, they've been really good lately. We knew that they could guard, but they've got great athleticism. Really 1 through 5. They can switch. They have tremendous kind of scoring pop. Maybe not necessarily the most cohesive offense in the world, but they have different guys who can step up on different nights. Like Jordan Carl Nichols, who I think was our player of the week in the Florida game. He didn't even start in that game, and has now become a starter, but doesn't necessarily score in double digits every night. They have just kind of come at you in waves, and they've had so many different starting lineups, so many different guys contributing, and I think you need that. So they're a deep club. They're very athletic, and they're getting down the stance and guarding at a high level, and the results are following.
Yeah, Coach Jones has always done a tremendous job there, and made a tournament run last year, went to the tournament, and then won a game last year. Won a game in the play-in round, or round of 68, I believe is what they call it. First 4. So congratulations to what they're doing there. Now we'll go HBCU Player of the Week next. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I believe Howard's got his second player of the week.
Always impressive when you can have multiple players from your program. And right. I think we've talked about it, but Kenny Blakeney's done a really good job with this iteration of Howard and kind of dealing with the post-maker aftermath of having to build a they built so much attention and buzz, and now to build a program that backs that up has been really impressive. And part of that's getting guys to step up and and develop over their careers. And a guy like Kyle Foster, who's a 5th-year guy now, Obviously, last year didn't get to have the season anyone wanted to because they stopped playing after a few games because of the pandemic. And he's become one of the best snipers in the country, shooting 50% from three. He had 6 threes twice last week in games, both against Delaware State. So he was lighting up the nets, torching the nets. And, when you have shooters like that to surround a great young point guard like Elijah Hawkins and, big time athletic guys up front like Settle and Brumont, like that makes you tough to guard. So Kyle Foster, if he keeps shooting the ball like that, he's going to win another Player of the Week. But right now, he should just he deserves a lot of credit for knocking down shots and playing his role.
Speaking of knocking down shots and playing his role, we'll move to mid-major Player of the Week. Keep it in the player category. Mid-major Player of the Week. Murray State is now 21, ranked 21st in the AP poll. KJ Williams, who John Morant quoted and said, pro. He's a pro. 39-6 last week. Monster player. This team is elite. We met with Tim Kaine last week on Coast to Coast without Sweeney. He couldn't make it, but we had to get him in anyway. But yeah, let's talk about Williams.
Yeah, not only did he have the 39-6 game against Tennessee State, but he then turned around against Moorhead on the road in a grinder, game in the 50s and put up 21 and 12. He's really productive. I think a lot of people talk about with this Murray State team, they think about the guard play with Tevin Brown and Juice Hill and, Carter Collins and the guys that they have there. But honestly, Williams is kind of what makes them go up front. And is the type of guy that you need to be able to pull an upset in the NCAA tournament. You need a guy who's 6'10", who's physical enough to deal with high major dudes, and he put up some huge numbers this week. So huge shout out to them. And again, Murray State's doing a tremendous job navigating every challenge in that conference. And
right,
to be 14-0 in any conference is really challenging. And they go on the road and win at a really good Moorhead team. So fitting that we show them some love, and certainly KJ earned Player of the Week honors this week.
Yeah, Moorhead's one of the top 2 teams, I believe, or top 2 or 3. They've been the top 2 teams in that league and have played them twice here recently in monster game in that game. Anytime you can be on a top 21 team or top 20 team in the country and you can put up 39, that says a lot because you're playing with other good players. You're not on a team that doesn't have. So anyway, Murray State, fun team, exciting team for March. Speaking of teams that are exciting for March, one that got a tournament win last year in March, mid-major team of the week, is North Texas. There's one now. I'm almost losing track. Is it 11 or 12 that they've won in a row? And they also have
10 in a row. 10 in a row.
They
started. How about this though? They started 2-3, and they're now 18-4. So 16 of 17.
Figured it out. A lot of new pieces. I mean, to lose Javion Hamlet, to lose Zach Simmons, to lose was it Lawson? I'm drawing a blank on the wing. Anyway, to lose the players.
James Reese.
Yeah, Reese. Yes, excuse me. Reese went to South Carolina. So, yeah, to be able to lose those guys and still be able to reload and do what they're doing and leading Conference USA right now. They're winning Conference USA. They're back-to-back champions in this league. Did it with kind of that same core group 2 years in a row. Now that core group has changed, and they've reloaded almost in a similar fashion that Baylor has, who, Coach Graham McCassin worked for Scott Drew at Baylor. And then tip our hat to Ross Hodge, who we had on last week as well, with heat check with Eli leading the defense and their number 1 scoring defense in the country. Tyler Perry's already won a Player of the Week for us, and as a dynamic guard off the bench who leads this team in scoring. Tavion Bell, arguably one of the most versatile players in that league. They're good. They're tournament ready again, in my opinion, because they're playing their best ball right now, and they are still the team to beat in this league, despite not necessarily being the traditional team that you would think that you have to go through in Conference USA. I mean, La Tech has Kenny Lofton back. They're still really good. UAB's already beaten North Texas. They are also really good. Western Kentucky's a team you hear about a lot in this league as well, but North Texas is still the team to beat right now.
Yeah, they've just been really solid here defensively in particular. They haven't given up over 70 points all season long. They really kind of take pride in how they guard. They gave up 70 points once. They gave up 71 to Kansas. So, tisk, Mean Green, no good. But no, they just deserve all the credit in the world for the rebuild and or not even reload. One stat I always love looking at with North Texas and McCaslin teams is they're 26th in the country in 3-point shooting percentage, and they take they're in the top quarter of the country in terms of rate of threes taken, in terms of the number of threes taken as a ratio of their total shots taken. So they take a lot of threes and they make a lot of threes. Defensively, only 12 teams let teams shoot fewer threes than North Texas. They really do a good job running people off the line. And when you do shoot threes, they're in the top 15 nationally in defending the three. So they just dominate the 3-point line every single game because they're taking a bunch of threes, they're knocking them down, they're not letting you take threes, and when you're taking them, you're not making them. And it's just, it's a great kind of footprint to describe what they do defensively and their whole kind of team, mentality. And it's why I think it's so hard to beat them, even though they've been in this kind of reload season, is they're so dedicated and so locked into their principles that no matter who's on the floor, what they're going they're going to execute. And so, it's great that you can bring in a Tyler Perry and have him step up and be the guy that they needed to be in the backcourt. And it's great that guys like Jones and Bell have really stepped up, and McBride has shot the ball really well. The Usman kid up front has had a nice year, but it's honestly it's less about the individual parts and more about putting together the parts in a system that makes sense. And I just think Grant and their whole staff does a tremendous job of identifying guys who really fit what they want to do on both ends of the floor and then putting them in those positions to be successful.
Yeah, elite at that, and love that they're doing it with some JC guys. You always love to see the JUCO guys getting some love with all these guys, former JUCO coaches on the staff. Again, number one in scoring defense, I believe I saw on their timeline on their social media that they're celebrating because they are locking up. And in defensive efficiency, they're 23 in the country, which is incredible to think for a team, again, that just now has really gotten there to play in this new defensive system for them. So shout out to them, mid-major team of the week. Then we go last to our high major player of the week.
Yes, Keegan Murray, the Iowa Star. Iowa's a weird team, and that
a little more Big Ten action. We like that.
We do like that. They don't have a signature win yet, but Keegan Murray is arguably the best scorer in the country. He's had 37 and 30 in his two games this past week. Just capable of impacting the game in so many ways. He can stretch the floor. He can get down to the basket. He can catch lobs. He can handle the ball. He can push in transition. You don't have to call a ton of plays for him to get 20 points, right? You're not lining it up and saying, all right, let's spread up, let's let Keegan do this in a ball screen. Let's run this action for Keegan. He will get 15 to 20 just by being around the ball all the time. And it helps that Fran McCaffery's a great offensive coach, great offensive mind. So he's done a great job of, putting himself in great positions and really had an explosive week against, albeit two of the worst defenses in the league in Maryland and Nebraska. But when you score 30 back-to-back nights, you deserve a little love. So we figured we'd give Keegan Murray a little love today.
30 at that level of play too, conference play, as we know, not easy to do, and he's balling out. What is our SI experts say about draft status? Can we let a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy Wu would be the best person to ask about that, but I believe let me check because I believe we have an updated Jeremy mock that I can find from relatively recent that would tell us where he was. I believe he's in the top 10.
Sports Illustrated teammate Jeremy Wu, that is.
Yes, elite draft analysis from Jeremy. Yeah, he was 6th in his most recent mock draft. He's gonna be a top 10 pick without a doubt. He does everything. He can guard multiple positions. He can switch. He can shoot the three. He's just a steady pro.
As surprising as anyone probably in the country too, as far as this time last year, probably wasn't even on the radar in any round.
He was 334th in the recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
He's a sophomore. He's going to be a top 10 pick.
Love it. Talk about some development. And played with National Player of the Year last year and was not even really still thought about. To think that they had both those guys on the same team may make them want to look back at some film last year and figure out how to get that. No, I'm just kidding. Let me stop. All right, team of the week. High major team of the week. A lot of controversy around this team from the public eye and probably even from inside the community and the fan base. But as they've talked about, they have a young team with a lot of young stars who's starting to figure it out. And if you remember Memphis last year, they played their best basketball toward the end of the year. They went on to win it in IT. Just hopefully they can continue to play the way they're playing and in the future have some older guys so they can start the year the way that they end the year. But Memphis, I already gave it away. They beat Houston. Talk about this Memphis club.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for everyone in this profession, certainly myself included, where we got to be as celebratory of the big wins as we are critical of the bad ones, right? And Memphis had some real bad ones early on, right? I think they earned all the criticism that they got early in the season. There's no question that they should have been better than they were, that they didn't, navigate some of the early season challenges well. That I think Penny would be, willing to admit that as well, that he did not coach a perfect season. But right now, when you win on the road at Houston, when you've now won 5 straight, when you're starting to build momentum, then you're now back in the mix to be an NCAA tournament team. I mean, at some point, you gotta give some credit, where credit's due, and Penny deserves credit for starting to right the ship. They're starting to defend at the level that they defended last year. That's been a problem for them this year, surprisingly. And this game, I mean, it was all about the old guys, right? I mean, Duran gave him a nice, double, but for the most part, it was really about, Landers Nolly going for 20 and DeAndre Williams creating shots and Alex Lomax being steady. He was on the floor for 32 minutes. This was not, oh, let's line it up. We've got all the 5 stars. This was, we've got guys who've been in big moments, who've been on the road, who've played big college basketball games, and those guys stepped up. I mean, in a game where, Memphis has, Amani Bates, who didn't play in this game, who has a top 10 pick in Jalen Duran, who has a future first-round pick in Josh Minott. The best player on the floor was a 25-year-old kid who transferred in from Evansville. And that's a great summary of college basketball. But I think, Penny deserves love for starting to turn it around, just as he deserved the criticism when things weren't going so well. So they deserve a team. They well-earned team of the week for the Memphis Tigers, and we certainly hope that they can continue to keep pushing.
Yeah, what does their picture look like for tournament? Do they still we talked about SMU, obviously Memphis getting a quad 1 win. What does that mean for them? Do they have a chance without winning the conference tournament?
They do. I actually, in my bracketology that I released today at Sports Illustrated, check it out. They are the last team in the field. So they are, the final at-large team, 36 out of 36. That means the margin for error is thin, particularly in this conference where you play games that you really don't want to lose. You play South Florida, you play Temple at home. You better not lose those games. But, if they can finish strong here, if they can win 5 of 6 to close the regular season, they're probably going to be going dancing. So, it was not as dire as it looked, partially because, the losses that they took in December looked far worse than they wound up being. Murray State at the time, you were thinking that's a good mid-major, but there's a good chance that'll be outside the top 75. It'll be a quadrant 3 game. Well, Murray State's not a quadrant 1 game because they're top 30 in the net. Ole Miss is a quad 2 road game, I believe. Tulane, I think, is a quad 2 road game. Iowa State on neutral court quad 1. So maybe in the preseason we didn't expect those, and when we were still kind of learning the full picture in November and December, we didn't think it. But now some of the losses look less bad than they did, and that Houston win will certainly age nicely for them.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Well, speaking of age nicely, it's about that time to bounce. Another great episode. Anything you want to close with and looking forward to this week? I will bring attention to the Equality and Inclusion Night with Rising Coaches, which has been a great success across college basketball. Just a national campaign to bring attention, bring awareness, keep insight in mind, just the concept of spreading love, equality, inclusion, and allowing programs to wear a pin of the equal sign. We've had from all levels, from junior college to high major, have received the pins, have represented, has been well received, and something that we hope to continue to grow going forward, just like Coaches versus Cancer or wearing pink. We'd like this to be a part of Black History Month and a part of February, but it's not just about Black history. It's also about inclusion of all kinds, equality of all kinds. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to that and then give it to Kevin to close with anything upcoming that you like.
Yeah, very cool. It's been awesome to see it adopted by so many people so quickly, and certainly hoping that it becomes a thing that gets talked about even more in the future. And kudos to all the people over at Rising Coaches be included who've helped get it off the ground. So shout out to that. Please go read my David Roddy article. I am of the opinion that it was a good piece. I hope that other people agree.
Great piece. Great piece. Not a good piece, great piece on a great young man having a fabulous season. I think the cool part is okay, I said this in the text with you, but you write the Coppin State article and then everything before the article comes out, Coppin State just helps the article blow up. They forget their jerseys. Yeah. You have the tweet that goes super viral that they forget their jerseys. They're playing in the other team's practice uniform, which just goes to show everything you wrote in the article. It just made it come to life. And then David Roddy, here you do come out here to Northern Colorado. You write this great article. Of course, he was a football player, could have played high major football, could have played high major basketball, had this relationship and bond with Nico and Coach Thorson and Ali and JR and the staff and Isaiah Stevens. And he is the game winner against San Diego State, who they lost to by 30 a couple months before and kind of got their run going again. So I don't know what it is, but if Kevin Sweeney is writing an article, expect some magic to be happening.
Well, B, I tweeted this. I went to 3 games in 6 days where a team was winning by 20 points, blew the 20-point lead, and still won the game. There's just something magical about me being in the building right now. There really is.
And when you came to Mountain West country, you went to 2 Mountain West games.
2 court storms.
4 NCAA tournament teams essentially playing 2 court storms. I mean, you can't beat that.
So I think that's a good sign for the NCAA tournament. So I'll be at the everyone should just pay attention. I'll be at the first round in Indianapolis, the second round in Philadelphia, and then the Final Four. So please pay attention to those because I will be there. That means there will be some Sweeney magic.
Sweeney magic. We have Woj bombs in the NBA and Sweeney magic. I love it. I love it. Well, in that note, we are going to bounce so Sweeney can go make more magic. He's got more great things to do out there in this world. You can find him on Field at 68, Sports Illustrated. Check out his article. And, if not, then just check out his timeline because you cannot not be entertained by that. At CBB_Central. I'm just as hype, man. What can I say?
I try to be entertaining.
All right. That's all we got.